Recently, I've become interested in the Vietnam War because it was the first contemporary war to really change the public image and public opinion on the war and the military. Rather than being hailed as almighty heroes who can do no wrong, they were shown as flawed humans through constant televisation of soldiers and what they were doing. It gave the public a more raw image of what was going on and allowed them to come to their own conclusions about the war. Since then, wars themselves have become glorified through the rise of first-person army shooters like Call of Duty or Battlefield, where you typically play as Chad Fat Dick, fucker of women and killer of commies. This was because that shit sells, and games that focus more on the true horror of war like Spec Ops: The Line don't. And as the machine that continues to pump out sequel after shitty sequel that we know as Ubisoft exist in their current form, as the games industry continues to exist in its current form, we seldom will find anything like this again. But if Ubisoft has proven anything to me, it's that they're full of surprises. When a game as easily digestible as Far Cry 3 has a story as profound as it is, without turning away casual players, they stick out to me as a developer better than those under the thumb of EA or Activision. However, they then didn't surprise me at all when they released Far Cry 4, which was actually pretty good but lacked a decently compelling story, and Far Cry 5, which lacked much of a story at all. I mean, it's there, but who actually fucking cares? And this is where Hours of Darkness comes in. Hours of Darkness is an expansion for Far Cry 5 that has its own story. Remember when I mentioned Chad Fat Dick from the Call of Duty games? Well, you play as him in this one, but this is not a typical army shooter. This game takes place in a Vietnamese jungle where Wendell, also known as Cowboy or Python 2.5, is on a chopper with his squad mates and friends, Joker, Moses, and Yokel. Separated from each other, Cowboy must make his way through the jungle, saving his squad mates and at the same time helping the war effort by saving South Vietnamese prisoners of war, destroying Viet Cong bases, and killing NVA commanders. These are optional content in the game, along with finding the lighters of fallen American pilots, destroying anti-air military, and destroying propaganda radios scattered around the jungle. So far, this probably doesn't sound that compelling. Okay, so Cowboy Longcock has to save his buddies and kill the minorities. Sounds like every other shooter, right? Wrong. Before I can explain why this is a different game, I must first explain the concept of ludonarrative dissonance. Ludonarrative dissonance is a term coined by Clint Hawking, which basically describes a game's ability to have the player's actions match the elements of the story. For example, in Grand Theft Auto 4, Nico's wish to escape the world he grew up in, one of poverty and war, is completely contradicted if the player decides to go on a killing spree. This is ludonarrative dissonance. The other end of the spectrum, ludonarrative consistency or harmony, is when the main actions of a player match with the overall story. By the way, this doesn't apply at all to linear games. If you make a ludonarratively dissonant linear game, find a new job. Anyways, ludonarrative harmony can be found in a number of games like Far Cry 3, BioShock, which was actually used as an example of ludonarrative dissonance, but I'll touch on that in another video, Fallout, and an argument could even be made for Watch Dogs 2, because Marcus is very much an anarchist. Ludonarrative harmony is very much a tool for immersion, and when used properly, it works very, very well. And Hours of Darkness has it in spades. Much like Far Cry 3, most of what you can do makes sense for your character. Cowboy is a dedicated, proud American soldier, and wants to see his country win the war. Likewise, he also has his friends, and would therefore want to save them. Even meandering through this hellish jungle has a point. He needs to get to his extraction zone. The side content, like destroying the AAAs, has the purpose of giving the player the ability to call in airstrikes, giving both the player and the protagonist a reason to be doing these things. In short, everything that the player is doing, the protagonist should also want to logically do. However, I feel like I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's go back to the beginning. Once the chopper is shot down, you are captured until an airstrike eliminates your captors, leaving you alive. From here, you receive intel that you can be extracted, but not at your current position. You're going to have to make your way through the jungle to the extraction point. You start off with no weapons, but on any playthrough, you're bound to find your first weapon before you run into any enemies. This weapon is not a gun, nor a knife, but a piece of bamboo. I don't know if you've ever interacted with a piece of bamboo in real life, but it's really hard compared to its weight. After escaping the NVA chopper, using your bamboo stick, you can use it to kill the first two enemies. However, these enemies are set up in such a way that it highly encourages the player to use stealth, making it almost painfully obvious. And this segues really nice into the stealth and survival instinct tutorial. Stealth is, well, it's fucking stealth, I'm not going to explain it to you, but survival instinct is a unique mechanic introduced just in this DLC. For every stealth kill you do, you gain a perk. The first perk, Adrenaline, allows you to move faster when crouched and auto-tag enemies within 10 meters. The second perk, Ghost, reduces your noise when walking, sprinting, and landing. You also get reduced fall damage. The third perk, Sixth Sense, will automatically tag enemies who are about to detect you and make animals less likely to attack you. The last perk, Predator, allows you to take enemies through walls with binoculars and auto-tag enemies within 20 meters. This is very interesting to me, and here's why. Remember when I was talking about ludonarrative harmony in this game? Well, the survival instinct mechanic complements it nicely. The Vietnam War was difficult for the Americans because they were unable to traverse and see their enemy in the dense Vietnamese jungles. A movie that beautifully illustrates this is We Were Soldiers, if you're interested. The game giving the player solutions to these problems relates well to the main difficulties of the real-life war. As well, the game is designed around these perks, making them central to the gameplay loop. The world is expertly designed with thick bushes and tall grass that you can use to hide yourself, but that also obscures the view of the enemies. In that way, avoiding combat when possible becomes the player's best chance of survival. I touched on this earlier, but the side content of the game also exemplifies ludonarrative harmony. The side content, as I said, is saving his squad mates, saving South Vietnamese prisoners of war, destroying Viet Cong bases, killing NVA commanders, finding the lighters of fallen American pilots, destroying anti-air artillery, and destroying propaganda radios scattered across the jungle. This is an example of ludonarrative harmony because these are things that Cowboy wants to do because it helps the war effort of his country, and it's things the player wants to do because these different elements are so well designed. Saving the squad mates, saving South Vietnamese prisoners of war, and destroying Viet Cong bases are usually done at the same time and are a lot of fun, like Far Cry Outposts usually are, because they are carefully crafted to give the player total freedom in whatever they want to do. It's possible to play in whatever manner you want, take it at whatever pace you want, and use whatever order or priority system you want. It challenges players that want to be challenged, while not locking out players who are looking for a more casual experience. At the same time, Cowboy wants to destroy these bases so that he can pass freely through the area of the jungle, save his squad mates, and help the war effort. One outpost that I particularly love is the one where one of his squad mates is set to be executed, and you must save him before that happens. Because, for more casual players, it allows them to play in the easiest, most obvious way, tactless violence. However, for more tactical players, they must plan and sneak as efficiently as possible. What's even nicer about this section is that when you first get to the base, you likely won't know what's happening, but when your squad mate gets shot, you have some time to save him before he bleeds out. There's an added layer of complexity here because if you do get caught, you lose all of your survival instinct perks, which makes the game significantly harder. So while saving your squad mate, you'll want to remain silent and avoid getting caught, which is seriously nerve-wracking in a good way. Killing NVA commanders is also fun because they're usually set up like mini outposts, which offers more of a challenging stealth experience because there's a lot less space to move around without getting caught, with only a few enemies around. It also offers the player an opportunity to regain their perks if they lost them, and restock on ammo if they're running low, because there's usually quite a bit of ammo to be found here. This also applies to the AAA guns, though these sections typically aren't as fun as the others. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, this is something that Cowboy would want to do because, again, it helps the war effort, and in the case of the AAA guns, gives him access to airstrikes for that section of the map. The rest of the side content is more of the same points, things Cowboy would reasonably want to do, they're fun, yada yada, but of course, it wouldn't be a Ubisoft game if they didn't completely fuck up something near the end. The end of this very small piece of DLC has our boisterous protagonist going to an American base in the middle of the jungle, Firebase Echo, surrounded by two huge mountains. On these mountains are AAA guns and mortars, which need to be secured by none other than Cowboy himself. After doing this, you are bombarded by wave after wave of enemies in a typical protect until a certain amount of time has elapsed type of deal, which is completely antithetical to the gameplay of the entire rest of the game. The perks are basically useless in this section because it's impossible not to get caught. Once you hold the spot for long enough, you are taken away on the chopper in a rail shooter and then the game ends. That's how the game ends, a huge fuck you to the entire foundation built by the entire rest of the game. You are given a grade based on how much side stuff you did, along with a picture in the art style of the time, which is a nice touch. Overall, I'd say that this DLC is really good, just a bit short if you ask me. However, I think that if I spent any more time in this jungle, it'd start to become repetitive. I definitely got my money's worth because these 3 hours are pure exhilarating stealth combat. I'd recommend it, 8 lighters out of 8. If you played this or are now considering it because of this video, or if you just have something you want to say, leave it in the comments. Remember to like the video if you like it, dislike it if you dislike it, subscribe for more shit like this, and if you are an iron bald Chad-like cowboy, smash that like button. It has also come to my attention that 0% of you who watch my videos are subscribed because no one watches my videos, so do something about that. Later.